Starving Anonymous was one of the most shocking series that I have, and get straight into the video. Usually when covering horror manga, I don't. The series begins with two friends enjoying lunch while the world outside grows hotter due to extreme climate change. On their bus ride home, they discuss the declining birth rates and the looming end of the world. Suddenly, everyone on the bus passes out except for our main character, IE. He starts feeling dizzy and notices that the driver is wearing a gas mask. IE then wakes up amidst a pile of unconscious bodies surrounded by rows of frozen corpses. The driver, speaking calmly, expresses disappointment that the gas didn't affect IE and labels him a Type 2. IE is then stabbed and thrown into a room filled with grotesque large people, all drinking a thick liquid from tubes. He spots his friend Kazu, who has become noticeably fatter after consuming the liquid. Just as IE is about to drink it, a mysterious man stops him, warning that the liquid destroys the mind. Another man, apologizing for the first man's aggression, introduces himself as Yamabiki and his companion as Natsun. They explain they've been trapped in what appears to be a breeding facility for human meat for the past 3.5 days. IE, panicking, starts
Gone. अबे किलियन एम्बापे अरे जा पर साबुन किलियन एम्बापे क्या 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 किलियन एम्बापे अरे जा पर साबुन किलियन एम्बापे
banging on the walls for help. Natsun punches him to keep him quiet as something begins entering the room. Natsun warns IE not to turn around and to pretend to drink from the tube. As the doors open, a giant caterpillar-like monster slithers in, killing and eating the bodies. After it leaves, two workers come in to clean up the mess. Natsun and Yamabaki in what appears to be a breeding facility for human meat for the past 3.5 days. IE, panicking, starts banging on the walls for help. Natsun punches him to keep him quiet as something begins entering the room. Natsun warns IE not to turn around and to pretend to drink from the tube. As the doors open, a giant caterpillar-like monster slithers in, killing and eating the bodies. After it leaves, two workers come in to clean up the mess. Natsun and Yamabiki ambush them, force the tubes into their mouth, steal their clothes, and plan their escape. Initially, they consider leaving IE behind, but his photographic memory of the facility is late 3.5 days. IE, panicking, starts banging on the walls for help. Natsun punches him to keep him quiet as something begins entering the room. Natsun warns IE not to turn around and to pretend to drink from the tube. As the doors open, a giant caterpillar-like monster slithers in, killing and eating the bodies. After it leaves, two workers come in to clean up the mess. Natsun and Yamabiki ambush them, force the tubes into their mouth, steal their clothes, and plan their escape. Initially, they consider leaving IE behind, but his photographic memory of the facility's layout convinces them otherwise. Before they leave, IE takes Kazu with them. They encounter two more workers, but Yamabiki convinces them that they're just new recruits. Behind them are 3 naked and blindfolded men. The group is invited to witness some with naked women, all drugged and begging for men to breed with them. The naked men are drugged to get them horny to breed until their heart stops beating. Yamabiki ambushes the workers and throws them in a cell, drugging one of them with the stimulant. He then theorizes that he might be behind this operation alone, speculating possibly involvement from the mafia or even the government. Whatever it is though, IE just needs to leave. But Natsun reveals that he has some unfinished business in the facility, while Yamabiki finds a strange beauty in this place. Kazun screams about a cool looking area and the group tries to silence him, but they stumble upon the room filled with floating cocoons and TVs displaying different languages. Workers enter the room as the group hides in a janitor closet. The workers are carefully cleaning the pods, but when one of them cracks open, a worker runs to trigger an alarm, abandoning his colleagues. The remaining men beg for release as a giant mantis creature emerges, mimicking one of the men and devouring the rest of the workers. That was a pretty strong introduction from this series, and already in just the first 2 to 3 chapters we're getting some pretty crazy visuals. In the first chapter we're already getting introduced to some real life themes like climate change and the birth rates of Japan. While I did think it was going to lean more into that, it does seem to connect with how the facility works. When it comes to the theories of Yamabiki, I think he's right about the government being involved, and that the reason that there is such a low birth rate is due to a large number of people getting sent to this facility. It could just be a play on how the real life birth rate in Japan is really low, but this also explains why there are only human workers instead of bug people just doing the dirty work. Now that doesn't explain why the government needs massive bug monsters, but we'll probably get the answer to that in later volumes. The art is the best part of the series. There's not much gore shown, but the designs of both the humans and bug monsters are amazing. This is a video that's been cooking for a very long time. Blood on the Tracks is a psychological horror drama that has taken the entire horror manga scene by storm. The fact that the series doesn't have an anime adaptation is literally criminal. Before that gets made though, I'm here to prepare you guys for the mind-boggling experience that's about to happen. So today, next week, and then the week after that, we are going to cover the entirety. The series begins with a boy named Sechi waking up from a dream stirred by his mother, Seiko. His life seems pretty normal. He lives with his parents, has friends who pick on him, and even has a crush at school. He makes plans with his friends to go out to eat the next day, but his mother informs him that his aunt and cousin will be visiting them. At dinner, Sechi tells his mother about the dream he was having. The day he approached a cat and began petting it, only to realize it was cold. His mother explained that it was dead, delivering the most unsettling, normal, creepy smile of all time. She's impressed that he remembered that moment since he was only 3 years old at the time. She then asked him how he thought the cat died, and Sechi replied that it probably got hit by a car. It's a perfect moment that builds up a mysterious and very creepy plot line. It's almost like they're hinting at Sechi was the one that killed the cat. I really hope I'm wrong in this though. The next day, his aunt and cousin Shige arrive at the house. Sechi and Shige play video games together, and Shige mentions how overprotective Seiko is. Shige thinks it's weird, but Sechi tells him not to talk about his mother like that. From that point on, Shige would visit every single weekend. On the last day of school, Sechi is walking home when his crush, Fukishi, approaches him and asks if they can walk together. It's awkward at first until they spot a cat on the road. Fukishi then asks if she can come over one of these days, but Sechi says that he'd have to see when his cousin isn't there. Fukishi says that she'll wait for his call and that it will be a date. Sechi comes home and asks his mother if he can bring a friend over, but she reminds him that they have a trip planned for next week. The week goes by and Sechi and his family go on a hiking trip. They follow a trail and take a rest at a nearby cliff. Shige tells Sechi about the amazing view from the cliff. When Sechi gets near it, Shige gives him a slight shove, but Seiko quickly grabs him. The group begins laughing at how overprotective Seiko is, and they continue along the trail. Later, Sechi and Shige go exploring and come across another cliff. Sechi hesitates to get close again, but Shige apologizes for earlier. Suddenly, Seiko appears behind Sechi and tells Shige to be very careful. Shige tries to show off, but he starts to lose his balance. Just as he's about to fall, Seiko grabs onto him. They take a moment, and Shige looks at her and whispers, "Auntie?" In an instant, Seiko pushes Shige off the cliff as Sechi watches in horror. He begins shaking in fear, but his mother drops to the ground and he yells at him to get the others. Sechi runs into the woods and he finds his family. When his aunt asks what happened, Sechi looks at her and says that Shige fell off the cliff. They rush back and find Seiko panicking, claiming that Shige lost his balance and fell. They spot Shige's hat and they start searching for a way to reach him, leaving Sechi and Seiko alone at the cliff. She begins to mutter to herself, complaining about her husband, until Sechi snaps her out of it. The volume ends with Seiko inching closer and closer, hugging Sechi tightly. A great intro to a very wild series, so let's hope that the rest of the volumes can compete. As
the fuck, man? ओए रोने पूछा है तारिक की वीडियोस लगा दे एंटोनिन में। ए बात हो तो गई, जोश कह रहा है करो जो करना है। अबे यार ओए 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 मुझे मारा। بيرزق
Oh, not you.
अबे भड़वेया, अबे कंजरेया, अबे तलिया, भड़वेया, तलिया, अबे भड़वेया, तलिया, भड़वेया, तलिया, तलिया, Equipment. Quickly, just looking at it right now. Very quickly. Beggars clothing. अबे ओए दल्लिया बढ़ गया Beggars clothing. हमरे भयंकर आएगा ही नहीं मुझे पता है ना स्कैम कर रहे हैं लोग अबे चोरी का माल खाने दे दो खाने दे दो मुझे Ver आलू ले लो गाजर ले लो मूली ले लो Doganimal. Doganimal. Use a 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 Doganimal. Use shakalaka daka laka laka maka laka boom shakalaka daka maka laka boom shakalaka daka boom shakalaka daka boom shakalaka daka all the books.
Not again, bro. Not again.
Gannibal is a series that I never really expected to get such a massive following. It's a low-key horror manga with a lot of great moments and twists here and there, and the huge lore and backstory around the characters just make the drama and mystery so interesting and compelling. For months, we've been following this series, and today I want to go over all of the 14 volumes of the series, starting with Volume 0 and going all the way through Volume 13. If you've been watching the series since the beginning, no, this isn't a re-upload. I'm just giving you guys a special Christmas gift to thank all of you for sticking with me and the channel. For those of you who are new to the series, you can watch the entire thing all in one go, and for those who have stuck by, have not just part 5 but also a special one-shot to look forward to.
But if you guys want to see more anime content like this one, then why not go down and hit that subscribe button.
And so without further ado, Merry Christmas everybody, and let's get on with the special. Volume 0 is a special 31-page one-shot to celebrate the release of the live-action J-drama. The TV show has some great reviews and even airs on Hulu and Disney+, with a season 2 on the way. The one-shot opens up with Takeru Kawaguchi being interrogated by the police about a murder. During the questioning, one of the officers point out that Takeru's child was given to Jin Goto, yet Takeru has maintained a good relationship with the Gotos. This raises the question that why would he commit such a violent act? The story flashes back to Takeru's life in the village. He's walking with his mother and his wheelchair-bound father when they come across a Goto member harassing a villager with his crew. The Goto member approaches Takeru, but he diffuses the situation by apologizing for disturbing them, and the group eventually moves on, though Kisuke, one of the Gotos, glances back at him. Takeru's father had always insisted that he protect their family, a duty that he took very seriously. Until the very first major arrest involving the Gotos. The incident was sparked by the murder of Kano-san, a former police officer that confronted the Gotos. Fearing that this crime would disturb the fragile peace of the village, Takeru grows increasingly anxious during his interrogation. At this point in his life, Takeru lived with his mother and took care of his father, who was often very hostile and expressed a very strong desire to die. Takeru is haunted by the memory of giving his own child away to Jin, a decision that weighed very heavily on him. When his father mentions that Takeru's wife leaving the village, Takeru snaps, shutting him down and promising never to abandon him or their village. The following day, Takeru becomes consumed with thoughts of his child, and while walking through the village, he hears a gunshot from a nearby building and rushes in, only to find a group of villagers casually discussing the upcoming festival and the children preparing for it. Takeru realizes what they were talking about and it enrages him. He lashes out, but the villagers retaliate, pointing out his own hypocrisy for giving up his own child. However, they then realize that it wasn't actually him who made that decision, was it? Back home, Takeru confronts his father, demanding to know the truth about his child's fate. Before his father can answer, his mother steps in, admitting that she was the one that handed over the child to Jin. Overcome with anger, Takeru strikes his mother, prompting his father to plead for him to stop. His father tried to rationalize it as just another Goto family act, but Takeru vows to put an end to their influence once and for all. The night of the festival arrives, and the villagers gather to celebrate. Takeru appears with 2 toolboxes, raising suspicion. When a villager calls him out, Takeru is prepared. The story cuts back to the present, where Takeru confesses to the police that he shot up the whole festival. Rather than remorse, he describes feeling liberated by his actions. The one-shot ends with the revelation that the officer interrogating him is none other than the main character, Daigo. I don't know exactly where the one-shot takes place in the actual story, but the flashback definitely takes place before Volume 1, before Daigo enters the village. The one-shot would be pretty confusing for readers who don't know anything about Gannibal. However, I tried to summarize it in a way so it becomes less confusing and more interesting once you guys actually get into the first volume. For people that have been caught up with the series, this one-shot is a little nice reference book. I like the little cameos, I like the little dynamic of the main character, and just for a mixed canon / filler one-shot, it was actually pretty enjoyable. But now, let's get into the actual meat and bone of the series and get into the first volume. Cannibalism is a topic that I never really expected to talk about on this channel, but the idea of it has been around for so many centuries and it's still seen in the modern era. It's become such a popular subject that many TV shows, movies, video games, and yes, even anime and manga have covered it a lot. Recently, a horror series called Cannibal has become the talk of the town for adding a unique twist on the cannibalism genre. The series has gotten so popular that it even got its own live-action adaptation on Disney+, with a season 2 already announced. So today, we're going to dive deeper into why this series is so popular and what makes it better than any other cannibalistic series out there. For over 200,000 years of mankind, there has existed a culture of cannibalism. Even still, it exists in certain places in the world, perhaps even a Japanese village. But surely not in this village though. A new police officer named Daigo has just transferred from the city to Kuge village. While some residents are welcoming, most see him as just an outsider. His wife, Yuki, and daughter, Mashiro, often visit him at work, as the village is certainly quiet. They enjoy the peaceful life but remain vigilant. Daigo is determined not to meet the same fate as his predecessor. The story is that the last officer had a huge debt from gambling and disappeared, saying weird stuff like the villagers are Before he could finish, a call comes in. They said they found a body. Daigo climbs up a hill with a rowdy long-haired hunter named Kisuke, who teases him about his agility. They eventually reach a gruesome scene, the mauled corpse of a Goto family member, most likely killed by a bear. Kisuke vows to hunt down the bear, but Daigo notices something odd. The corpse has a human bite mark on the arm, positioned in a way that makes self-infliction impossible. When Daigo points this out, Kisuke gets defensive, accusing Daigo of suggesting Goto family abuse. Tensions rise, and Kisuke pulls out his shotgun, aiming it at Daigo's head. The other hunters in the family encourage Kisuke, but Daigo quickly apologizes, and Kisuke reveals that it was just a practical joke. Although the hunters laugh, Daigo isn't amused. Still, they invite him and his family to join them for drinks later that night, emphasizing the importance of building a good relationship with the villagers, something that the last officer failed to do. Daigo and Yuki argue about him going out drinking, but he ultimately joins the hunters, lying that his family couldn't make it because they're visiting Yuki's hometown. The hunters see through the lie though. Everyone in the village knows what he does and when he does it. Meanwhile, Mashiro sneaks out in the middle of the night as Yuki, realizing they're living in the last officer's house, notices a carving on the wall, saying, "Run away." At the bar, Daigo discusses the rumors the last officer spread about the villagers being cannibals, which the hunters laugh off. Elsewhere, Mashiro wanders alone on a snowy road and encounters an old man with a cart filled with chopped limbs and a bloody finger in his mouth. The hunters plan to hunt down the bear in the morning, warning Daigo to be cautious. When Daigo returns home, Yuki shows him the eerie carving. He checks on Mashiro, who is safely asleep, but has a splash of blood on her. She wakes, and hands him something that shocks him to his core. The next morning, Daigo joins the hunters on the mountain, but a young hunter named Yusuke lags behind, not wanting to be left with the outsider. Kisuke emphasizes that the mountains are hunter territory and doesn't like it when outsiders interfere. While getting lost in the woods, Daigo receives a call from a pathologist named Nakamura, who reveals that the finger Mashiro found doesn't belong to the woman, but to someone else. Suddenly, a shot rings out, missing Daigo. It's Yusuke.
Well, I got.
Fire to get Daigo down to the bear, which attacks Daigo, but Yusuke kills it with a single shot. Kisuke and the hunters celebrate, and Daigo is no longer seen as an outsider. They dissect the bear, confirming that it killed their grandmother, and Kisuke demands Daigo to eat a piece of his grandmother's flesh as a sign of respect. At that moment, Daigo realizes that the villagers are indeed cannibals. Already in just half of the first volume, so much stuff has occurred that I literally had to split these into 2 parts. I really enjoyed this part of the volume. I love the family and the mystery around this entire town. The art is very high definition and the artist loves to work with shades. It definitely helps out a lot when designing the different characters like Kisuke. A majority of the backgrounds don't even look like drawings. The backgrounds look like pictures taken from real life, which the mangaka Masaki Ninomiya stated were drawn by combining various photos he has taken, but since he doesn't have much reference material, he draws them all on his own. Daigo is an interesting main character. He seems really nice and the way that he handles situations is very realistic. Daigo being an outsider is actually inspired by the mangaka's real life experience. In an interview with Mangasplaining, Ninomiya states that the feeling of being enclosed exists everywhere, whether you're in the city or the courtside. I entered a company in the city made up of only locals, and they treated me like a proper outsider. The foreign entity entering any completed environment has it hard regardless of era and place. Daigo and his family are really wholesome as well, but like I said before, it's also really realistic. Him and Yuki fight, but nothing that would impact their love, which is a pretty small detail, but it just shows character. The townfolk are very sketchy, but I feel like they're a little bit too sketchy. From the beginning we knew that the story was about cannibals, and the different implications across the chapters show that the villagers are not what they seem. The villagers are clearly cannibals, but it could just be something that they wanted to get out of the way quickly. Or they could just be trying to misdirect us from the bigger twist and mystery. I say this because the final scene with the eating of the grandmother's flesh isn't as bad as you think cannibalism is. When you think of eating people in the media, they usually go over the top with it. However, here they're practicing cannibalism in a way to pay respect and mourn the dead. In the 1500s, cannibalism was a way to mourn the dead in a way we do funerals now. They would eat the bodies as an act of affection or to mourn. Obviously, now the practice has been completely demolished in most areas. However, I feel like the village still does these practices and one cannibal has just taken it too far, aka the old man that we see with a finger on the road. I think the story is trying to mislead us into thinking that the villagers are the villains, when in reality there's just a big bad lurking in the background. After the hunt, Yuki picks up Daigo with Mashiro, who hasn't spoken since the incident. Daigo blames himself, but Yuki comforts and reassures him. As they drive, they pass a mysterious woman on the road. The next day, Daigo investigates the fate of the last officer, Osamu Kano, starting with his daughter, Sumire Kano. Kisuke invites Daigo to a funeral ceremony for the victim, while Mashiro enters elementary school. During the ritual, villagers must cover their faces, but they realize an extra person is present. The mysterious woman from the road reveals herself as Sumire Kano, who claims that her father was murdered. Confronting her, Kisuke dismisses her accusations, but she kicks over the coffin, revealing it to be empty. Sumire says, "There's nobody to bury because they've already eaten her." A mob starts to form, but Kisuke distracts the angry crowd, giving Daigo a chance to take Sumire away. Before they can escape though, a smelly man with his face covered attacks the crowd, causing chaos. Sumire explains to Daigo that the villagers eat the dead to pay respects, inheriting their souls as part of a mourning process, a practice repeated for decades worldwide. She adds that the last time she saw her father, he was fighting with the Goto family, suggesting that they are somehow involved in the recent events. Determined to investigate, Daigo heads to the Goto family property. A tree falls in his path, but a man related to Kisuke chops it up, allowing Daigo to proceed. But before letting him go, the man shows Daigo a recording of Kano's last known sighting. The footage depicts Kano, angry and distressed, accusing the Goto family of cannibalism. Despite the man's obvious instability, Daigo decides to use it as evidence and continues his investigation for Sumiri's sake. Meanwhile, the man discusses with another, hinting that he, the old man from the first chapter, will deal with Daigo. Back at home, a neighbor warns Yuki about the barbaric nature of the Goto family. Meanwhile, the Goto family discusses Daigo's investigation, and one member decides to hunt him down. As Daigo investigates the property, he senses someone stalking him and recording him in the same spot as the footage. Suddenly, a man points a rifle at Daigo's head, demanding that he leaves. Daigo remains calm, refusing to go. When the man pulls the trigger, Daigo swiftly disarms him, taking the rifle away. Though very calm, Daigo is unnerved by the man's intent to kill. Returning home, Yuki finds Kisuke, Yusuke, and another man inside her house. She demands to know their purpose as more Goto family members enter. They aren't looking for Daigo, they're after her. We cut back to Daigo as he takes down the 3 men, arresting them. One of the men warns Daigo that it's too late and that he won't let you go. As Daigo prepares to take them away, the elderly members of the Goto family plead with him to let him handle the matter. Daigo asks who he is, only to find out when the old man swings a scythe towards his head. The final scene is Nakamura trying to call Daigo, but it leads to voicemail. He has found the identity of the finger that he sent him. It's none other than the last officer, Osamu Kano. As many of you know, I love a good mystery series, and this story is filled with them. We learned that I was right about the villagers participating in cannibalism for mourning and respect. However, it's not all of the villagers, but a specific family called the Gotos. Another big mystery is the last officer, Osamu Kano. He decided to go after the Goto family for cannibalism, which is not legal in Japan, but I feel like it's an overreaction going to their property waving a gun around. Unless, like I said in the last part, the old man is committing multiple murders that end in cannibalism. But other than that, one of my favorite mysteries of this series revolves around Daigo and his family. Why did Daigo get transferred from a city to a middle of nowhere village? What was the incident that caused Mashiro to be mute? And how is Daigo responsible for it? These are the biggest questions I had reading, and it made me engaged in the overall story going forward. The only real problem I have is some of the side characters aren't really that interesting, and it's pretty difficult to keep up with like the whole Goto family, but I'm not really interested in Yusuke or this guy or even the 3 dudes that tried to kill Daigo anyway. Sumire was a great twist character, but I honestly don't think we need her in the story moving forward. I mean, she's not a detective or a cop, so I think just having a kid's sidekick would just be very unnecessary for the plot. I think this is one of the best ways to end a volume, and it keeps me coming back for more. Daigo is found unconscious, floating in a river by the police. He wakes up in the hospital, his family by his side, and the Goto family standing in front of him. Though he's obviously angry, Kisuke and the others apologize for their violent family members, explaining that they were trying to protect Yuki and Mashiro. One family member apologizes for his brother cutting Daigo's forehead, but Daigo corrects him that it wasn't his brother, but an old man. Kisuke mentions that 2 of the attackers have turned themselves in, but 1 remains at large. Daigo starts to recall the incident and realizes that the old man was the same one from the funeral, recognized by his foul odor. Kisuke mocks Daigo, who responds by kicking them out. Later, Matsuo Goto finds Daigo's phone, listens to the voicemail, and texts Nakamura to arrange a meeting. Daigo tries to leave the hospital to arrest Matsuo, leaving the police escorts to protect his family. Outside his house, Sumire tells Daigo that she's leaving the village, but gives him another clue, the last phone number her father called. Before she leaves, she tells Daigo that Kisuke is different from the other family members. Yuki expresses her desire to leave the village, fearing for their safety after the last officer's death and Daigo's near fatal encounter. Daigo agrees she should leave, but she insists that she won't go without him. Daigo tries to call Nakamura, unaware that Matsuo is planning an ambush. Daigo heads to the hospital with another cop. There, he meets with the police chief and discusses his attack at the Goto residence. The chief and 2 other professionals are shocked by Daigo's account and agrees to reopen the case, but decide to keep Daigo out of it because of his connection. He accepts, leaving the case for the sake of being with his family. As Daigo leaves to meet Nakamura, a truck nearly crashes into his car. Matsuo was the one driving, and he turns himself in. He confesses to killing Kano, and as proof, leads them to his corpse. But Daigo remains skeptical. The chief questions Daigo's testimony about his attacker, but Daigo stands by his story despite the elders' conflicting testimonies. The chief warns Daigo again to stay away from the Goto family. Kisuke and other Goto members visit the corpse to pay their respects, urging Daigo to get along with them. Though Daigo wants to continue investigating, he knows he can't afford to end up like Kano for his family's sake. Daigo notices a bite mark on his shoulder, realizing that the Goto family wants to keep him from uncovering the truth about the old man. 2 weeks later, life seems to return to normal. Daigo resumes his police duties while Yuki and Mashiro live peacefully among the villagers. Daigo notices that the villagers also avoided mentioning Kano's name, not just the Goto family. One day, a villager invites Daigo to a drinking party, and Yuki asks to join. The party goes well until Daigo brings up the Goto family. A villager admits that they avoid discussing the Kano incident due to its connection to the Goto family, blaming themselves for not intervening. After the party, Daigo asks Yuki if she still wants to leave the village, but she decides to stay, feeling accepted by the villagers despite the incident. He has no right to blame the villagers for what happened to Kano. After all, he did kill someone in front of Mashiro. Now this story takes a pretty interesting turn from here. We get answers to questions that basically solve this whole mystery, but it just turns out that there's way more to the story than we thought. Not only do we know what happened to Mashiro, but now we also know what happened to Kano. Why are the Gotos avoiding Daigo? What's the deal with the old man, and why are the villagers, including the chief of police, afraid of the Goto family? This does kind of prove my theory that it's just the old man who's the big bad, but he hasn't really killed anyone that we know of, and that also doesn't explain why the old man saved Daigo. But even if the mystery isn't solved, I like the fact that Daigo basically moved on for the sake of his family. It shows a lot of character to Daigo, and it gives us more wholesome scenes of the family. We finally know the incident that made Mashiro mute, and we won't get the full details until the next chapter, but already we could paint a picture of what happened. I didn't think much about the daughter being mute. I didn't think it was really important to the story until they really revealed it to be trauma based. Mashiro being mute also plays a really big part in the horror as well. Ninomiya states that, when I thought of the last scene for the first chapter, if it was a normal child, they would have been able to tell their parents about the situation, and I think the sense of urgency would have been different. Even though Gannibal wasn't meant to be a horror series, the situation of a mute child encountering all kinds of horror and not being able to tell anyone of power, in a way enhances the horror element. Trauma affects everybody differently, but it's way more horrific to see and feel the trauma itself, which perfectly leads us to "5 months earlier, Daigo responds to a backup call from 2 detectives chasing down a suspect. Meanwhile, at a school event, Mashiro describes her father as a policeman who catches bad guys. But while everyone calls her dad great, she doesn't think so, because he's a violent policeman. We see Daigo brutally interrogating a suspect, seeking the names of his accomplices. After extracting the information, Daigo is confronted by a superior, warning him about his actions. Daigo is soon to be assigned to a sexual assault investigation involving children, which he's very eager to catch the perpetrator. At a park, Yuki and Mashiro are approached by Daigo, who wants to play. But Mashiro is very upset with Daigo for beating up a neighborhood boy who did things with kids, though she doesn't know the whole story. As they leave, a hooded figure, Tsubasa, the neighborhood boy, appears. Daigo warns Tsubasa to stay away from Mashiro, or else he'll kill him. However, it's very difficult for him since he's in love with her. The next day, Daigo investigates a suspect who was involved with 3 young children. Mashiro sneaks out to visit Tsubasa, thanking him for his kindness but saying that they can't play anymore. Daigo receives a call that Tsubasa let a child into his house and rushes over. Police knock at his door and Mashiro begins to call out to her dad. Daigo, panicking, breaks in and assaults Tsubasa. Mashiro tries to intervene but is pushed aside. Daigo's partner tackles him and Mashiro cries, questioning why he would act this way. As a cop escorts Mashiro out, Tsubasa slashes the cop's ankle and holds Mashiro at knife point, demanding Daigo shoot him. Daigo, forced to act, shoots Tsubasa. After the incident, Mashiro becomes mute and emotionless, prompting the family to move to Kuge village. In the present, the family and villagers celebrate New Year's. Back at home, Daigo thanks Yuki for supporting him through everything. As they start to get intimate, Daigo notices someone watching through the window. Outside, he finds "Murderer" painted on their house. One of the Goto members from Kisuke's group was responsible for the graffiti. The villagers quickly clean it up, but soon after, Daigo receives a call about another incident. He meets up with Kisuke, who has turned in the suspect. He had been bragging about